Your 20s and your 30s were your 20s and your 30s, and they have their place and they have their value, but that era is finished, and now you're in a different stage of life. But that doesn't mean that you need to let yourself go, that you should let yourself go. And so chances are you aren't a perfect 10. You might only be a 4 or 5 or 6 or something, right? But guess what? Most people are. So the question becomes, how well do you take care of yourself? You don't have to look sloppy. You don't have to feel raggedy. You don't have to feel rickety. Have you ever looked around, just looked up and saw the people around you? They could be acquaintances, maybe family members or close friends or something like that, people you work with, whatever. But you take a look around and you wonder what's happening to people. And what you see right before your eyes is you see people letting themselves go. Not because they have to let themselves go, but they've just decided to let themselves go. Almost like, in some ways, you see people giving up on the potential of life, even though there's still so much left. There's still so much juice in the fruit that can be squeezed out. You see people just letting themselves go. So I'm going to be talking today primarily to people who are in their 40s and 50s. Okay. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to get into that right after I introduce myself. I am Mark Johnson, the founder of BouncePep, bringing you ideas for a fit and flourishing future. I'm also the youngest son of Bill Johnson. I do want you to leave comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel. You got any problems, anything you want to get off your chest, go ahead, leave it in the comment section. And a lot of times I do respond. So, why am I talking to people who are in their 40s and 50s this week? It's because this is when I notice a lot of people, this is the kind of the age bracket where a lot of people begin to let themselves go. Okay. And when I say, you know, when I talk about letting oneself go, what I'm talking about is just not really caring very much about keeping oneself in good physical condition, keeping oneself healthy, keeping one's appearance up. You see a lot of people just letting themselves go when they get into middle age. Okay. Now, let's point out that if you are in your 40s, 50s, like I say, okay, the goal is not to go back in time and to be what you were when you were 20, because that's just ridiculous. And a lot of times you just end up looking silly. You see people do this sometimes where they're clearly trying way too hard to go back to their younger years. And it just can look absurd when you get carried away with it. And that's not what we're talking about here. Okay. Your 20s and your 30s were your 20s and your 30s, and they have their place and they have their value. But, that era is finished, and now you're in a different stage of life. But that doesn't mean that you need to let yourself go, that you should let yourself go. And that's what I'm talking about with you today. You notice that, I'm not looking up and down. I don't have any notes or anything that I'm reading from. This is just a heart to heart. Okay. Now, I want you to hear me on this. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So, most people who don't know me, and the only thing that they have to go on is just what they see, they inevitably will underestimate my age, right? Now, I don't say that to boast. What I'm saying is that that's not by accident. It's because, I've never stopped caring about how I feel and how I look. And so I put time and effort and I invest money, into making sure that I keep my health and my fitness up. And I look my best. Now, I don't look like a model. I know that I'm, a pretty average looking guy, but I look the best that I can. I work with what I have to make myself look the best that I can, right? And that's all that any one of us can. That's all you can do. You may not, in terms of just your physical appearance, look, there aren't many perfect 10s in the world, right? That's what makes everybody look at a perfect 10 is because there just aren't that many walking around, right? And so chances are you aren't a perfect 10. You might only be a 4 or 5 or 6 or something, right? But guess what? Most people are. So the question becomes, how well do you take care of yourself? You don't have to look sloppy. You don't have to feel raggedy. You don't have to feel rickety and be all off balance and, ugly and everything. Like you don't have to. You don't have to let yourself go just because you've hit middle age. Okay. You see where I'm coming from with this message? Not using any big words. I'm not dropping a bunch of statistics, although I will give you one statistic here that you should be concerned about. Okay. Now, once you get into your 30s, so now we're talking about earlier than your 40s and 50s. Once you get into your 30s, you have to understand that you're going to lose anywhere between 3 and 8% of your muscle mass naturally. If you like every decade, every 10 years, you're going to lose between 3 and 8% of your muscle mass. That goes for men, that goes for women. You will lose it if you do nothing to combat it. In other words, it's not inevitable, right? What did I say? Let yourself go. If you let yourself go, that is what will happen. You will get, as time goes on, weaker and weaker and frailer, and therefore you won't feel your best, you won't look your best because you're letting yourself go. Okay? Now, I don't want to get caught up on just appearance because the most important thing that I'm getting at here is really your overall health. And I want to touch on your intellect too, but I'm going to touch on that maybe a few moments down the line. But let's just stick with your health for a second here. Okay. Um, be interested in your own health. Be interested in your own health. Uh, be interested in eating well. And when I say eating well, I mean not just eating every possible thing. I'm talking about eating healthy foods that give you life, okay, and that make you feel good, and especially to make you feel good in the long run. Because a lot of unhealthy things that we eat make us feel good in the short run. In other words, they give us kind of that dopamine rush. They give us that instant gratification, but in the long run, they're detrimental to our health. Okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to be intentional about the food that you're putting in your body, especially if you're in your 40s and 50s. You have to understand you don't have the same leeway that you had when you were in your 20s to just be eating anything and everything, health consequences be damned. Like you have to be more intentional now because I got to be honest, I see a lot of people. I mean, think about this. You probably can take a look around you right now, or you can probably just, maybe if you're sitting down right now, I want you to just think to yourself about all of the people that you know. Let's just say, for instance, that you are 45 years old. I'm just throwing out a number. Let's say you're 45 years old. You probably know other people right now who are the same age as you who are having health problems and like chronic health issues. And the thing is, you think about it, 45 is not old. 45 is not old. It's middle age. Middle age ain't old. Okay? It's not old. And you see people that you know, people that you work with, your family, your friends. If you're going to church, maybe you see people in church and they just feel terrible. They don't look all that great and they got all these health issues. And it's like, how can this be for somebody who's only 45 years old in this modern world that we live in, where knowledge is everywhere? Like, there's so much information about things that you can do to be a healthier person, live a healthier life, right? But you see people mid 40s, bodies breaking down on them, right? I don't want you to be in that group. I don't want you to let yourself go. Let me tell you one of the things. Let me tell you what my approach was. So, in my 40s, I started working out, and when I started working out, I hired a personal trainer. So the first time that I stepped into a gym, I had a trainer. I didn't just step in there not knowing anything, convinced that I could just start lifting some barbells or something and I was going to see results. No, I knew that I didn't have experience and I needed someone to show me the ropes. And so I invested money in a personal trainer. Now, the benefit of doing that is that the personal trainer was able to show me the proper way to do exercises, was able to recommend some things that I should eat, some ways that I could improve my diet, and some things I needed to do in order to build muscle, right? But I was willing to take the time and I was willing to basically invest the time and the money, all right, to get off to the right start. And one of the keys when it comes to not letting yourself go is being willing to invest your money. Okay? You got to be willing to invest. You got to be committed and you got to be willing to invest time and money. And don't be afraid to spend a little money to keep yourself in good condition. Because I just want to remind you, always remember this. The money that, if let's say you hire a personal trainer and they're not cheap, you need to have some money to hire a trainer. Okay, so they're not cheap, but I want you to just remember this. That money that you invest in that personal trainer is going to be nothing to the amount of money that it would cost you to be shuttling back and forth to the hospital and to pharmacies and buying medications and being on treatments and getting shots in perpetuity. Like the cost of being in bad health and in poor shape is way, way higher than your little investment in a personal trainer. So I want you to think about that and do that calculus in your mind and make sure that, you're not, a lot of times people, think about the money that they have to invest in keeping themselves in better condition. And it seems like it's too much or it's a waste, but don't be penny wise and pound foolish, as they say, right? Think about how much cheaper that is compared to being sick. Right? So this is a big part of our message to you today. You want to feel your best, you want to look your best. You've got to be willing to commit, spend the time, or I don't like to say spend, invest the money, okay? Spending and investing are not the same thing. When you spend money, you don't expect to see, it's just poof, it's gone. When you invest money, okay, you're investing it because you're expecting to get something back in return that far outseeds whatever money you invested. So think in terms of investing. Okay. Now, I mentioned to you something about knowledge. You can let yourself go when it comes to your knowledge as well. You know, the vast majority of people don't even read 5 books per year. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look it up. I mean, the stats are out there. The vast majority of people do not even read 5 complete books, cover to cover, per year. Okay? What that means is you got a lot of folks out there who are letting themselves go in terms of their intellect. I got news for you. You don't know that much, and I don't know that much, and nobody that you or I know knows that much when you think about the total store of human knowledge. No single person knows that much compared to all that is knowable. And so don't be arrogant. Hubris is a real thing. Don't be arrogant and think that you don't have something to learn. Even if you're in your 40s or 50s now, no, you're not a child. but you still have things to learn. Don't let your intellect go. Keep learning. Keep reading. I mean, I'm talking about pick up a book and read. Don't let your intellect go. There's somebody who has some experience somewhere that you don't have, and they have a story to tell, or they have some theories to share that you can learn from. Okay? So don't let your health go. Don't let your looks go. Don't let your intellect go. You're in your 40s, you're in your 50s. You're not old. You're midlife. That ain't old. Okay? So let me go back to the beginning. Let's rewind. I want you to be feeling your best, looking your best. All right? You can do it. You can absolutely do it. And I want to make a very important point. Your looks can improve if you are willing to put in the work, invest the time and invest the effort. Your health can improve. Your looks can improve. Your intellect can improve. You can learn like new things. You don't have to just like, it's like life is just not like the story is already written just because you're in your middle age. No, you can still actually author your story from here, figuratively speaking. You still have a story to write. Okay? It's not just preordained. So I want you to take this message to heart because I see so many people who are, like I said, 40s, 50s, and maybe in terms of their career, they're they're doing well because they're in terms of career, they're kind of in the prime of their life and everything. But I just see them in other ways, letting themselves go in terms of their fitness and their health and their physique and their appearance, and they're not learning as much as they should be, could be, right? So don't let yourself fall into that category. Okay, that's my message for you today. I want you to take this with you. Talk to you next time.